I'm David Ainsworth, Head of Communications at the United Nations Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We're here at the Geneva Meetings, and it's been 5 days the delegates have been advancing their discussions on the Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, let me just remind you that there are 3 meetings taking place here in Geneva. There's a meeting of a body on science, where representatives of governments talk about the scientific basis for our work on biodiversity. There's a body on implementation, which means looking at the conditions by which governments are going to carry out this plan at the global level. And then finally, there are the negotiations for the global framework itself, the targets, goals, and milestones that governments will follow over the next 10 years to make this happen. The discussions yesterday focused on a number of key elements related to the framework. So first of all, the negotiations for the framework and the targets themselves took a look at the last set of targets under the framework, the 7 last targets. And these last targets, they relate to how do we support governments as they move forward to save biodiversity. The 7 targets went very, very well, but what emerged over the day was that delegates thought we might need additional targets to cover some other elements, or maybe some of the existing targets might have to be split into 2. On one hand, that makes things more complete, but it's a greater complexity and a lot more that has to be agreed. So those discussions are going to continue over the next few days. The body on implementation also met yesterday, and that body discussed finances and money. There are 2 parts they talked about. The first part they did is they talked about resource mobilization, which is what is the way that we can make sure that we've mobilized money, people, scientific resources at all levels to implement the convention. The idea is, can we get governments to commit to raising the amount of money they raise in their national areas? Can we get the global financing institutions to raise the amount of money? Those discussions were very tough, and it's hard to find the amount of money that we need for this. We're hoping that those will continue over the next little while. Delegates also talked about the financial mechanism for the convention. This is the Global Environment Facility. It's part of the World Bank, and it provides resources so that developing countries can implement the convention in areas. Delegates talked about what guidance should they give the Global Environment Facility. Where should this body put its money? How much should it give? And what are the conditions for making it available to developing countries? This is a complex document that they're going to work through, but it's a big deal because it will provide specific guidance for the disbursement of $4–5 billion every year for the next little while. So, the science body has also been meeting these days. They have been focusing on the question of monitoring the Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, the monitoring you need so we have an understanding of, are governments making progress on this? Are they actually achieving the goals and targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework? Now, how do you operate a monitoring framework? Well, you need to create something called indicators. Now, an indicator is a little bit of data that tells you, are you achieving a specific goal you set out for yourself? So, for example, one indicator could be birds. If you want to know if your bird populations are increasing, the indicator would be more birds in the skies. Or let's say you want to know about the health of wetlands ecosystems. Your indicator could be about water flow through that particular system. The indicators have to be agreed by all of the governments, which means they have to work at the global level, and each country has to think, will this work in my area? The system to come up with this measurement or agreement amongst all of them is a traffic light system. It's an interesting idea. So the idea is that each delegate is asked to look at one of the indicators and to say, okay, does that indicator, is it reliable? Does it have information at the global level? And does it have information that I can find in my country? If they agree it's the case, then they say that has a green light, which means that they agree.
They also comment on 1601, waste index overview if green.
Each country is asked to rate the indicators that way. If they say, it's not so good, it's given a yellow light. And if the governments say, there's no way I could capture that indicator, I don't think it's reliable, they give it a red light. It's a traffic light, so we know, are the negotiations advancing on this target, green, or are they stopped and they've got to go back to the drawing board?
So for questions 2, 3, and 4, we will give a yellow.
So the delegates will do that with a whole suite of different indicators for all the targets. The one thing I've got to say is that they did identify yesterday that they might need as many as 30 more indicators, which points out the problem is you need indicators to capture the targets in an effective way, but what if you have too many? How much information do you need? How much money will you spend gathering this information? It's a balance between effectiveness, good quality data, and the resource that everybody has to do it. The discussions are continuing, and even behind me right now, I hear them discussing red lights and green lights. The discussions here will continue again in Geneva on Saturday, and then the delegates will take a break for Sunday. They'll rest, they'll visit parts of Geneva and the area around, and then they will start again on Monday. Join us again on Monday when we'll enter the home stretch for these negotiations, when things will have to become more clear and consensus will have to be met. In Geneva, I'm David Ainsworth.